So, I want to thank the Council on Aging for inviting us here today to talk about the Greater Newburyport Village. But at the same time, it's important that we thank the Council on Aging, and not just this Council on Aging, but all our Council on Agings, where you provide the services that us seniors need as we leave retirement and, and go into our next days. And, you all provide the services that we need relative to when we want to go and get our Medicare taken care of. That's where we need to come, because we can never figure that out on our own. And I only hope that more seniors in this town and other towns would take advantage of those services, because they are so helpful. If folks need meals, you have the Meals on Wheels. You have your outreach, where you outreach to folks in the town and find out how they're doing. If they have issues, they can call you, and you can follow up and then guide them in the places where they need to go. If folks are looking for housing, it's a good place for them to come to find out what are the requirements to sign up to get into some of the senior housing that might be available in town, which is a long process, and you are the folks who can guide them through it and tell them the real story about you need to get on early and you need to be persistent and stay at it. Those are the things that the Council on Agings do for us, and it's a wonderful service, and it's so nice that young people like you just coming on board here yesterday or today and have come to get to know what we seniors are up to and how you can help us get through this process that we've come to. But it isn't just those things. It's the things that go beyond that. It's you have a thing where you send a craft kit home with people. And those are ideas that folks in the group come up with and say, how do we do this? How do we fund it? And then how do we get it out to people? You have your Channel 9 things that you've done during COVID, particularly because we all had to face Zoom and all those stuff. That's my new four-letter word, Zoom. But you're able to adjust to that and fulfill the needs of people. So not only your Council on Aging, but it's across the country, where folks like you have done a wonderful job, and I commend you for it. So I'm here to thank you, not for inviting us here today, but for what you do. It's very, very much appreciated. And I can tell you that our membership of folks who have taken advantage of some of those things, but we're going to tell you what's a little bit different about what we offer. It might be, it's the same except where it's different. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
You want to tell them a little bit?
Sure. So, you just heard from Paul, president of the village, and I'm Bill Franz. I'm also on the board of directors with Paul, and I work on marketing. Basically, what I try to do is spread the word about the village so that people in the community know who we are and what it is that we do. And a presentation like this is terrific. We used to do a lot of them, but it's been about a year and a half since we've done that. I'm happy that we're here today. Once again, thank you for the invitation. So we only have a few PowerPoint slides, and we're going to use them as we kind of walk through our presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit, Paul's going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to go back to Paul. And Paul, I'm a charter member. Paul is a charter member, but he goes beyond that. He's a founding member. So he was one of the few people in the Greater Newburyport area who had the idea about creating a village. So I'm going to ask Paul to just talk for a few minutes about, well, what was the idea and how did we get started?
So I'll take the opportunity to sit down to tell you about this first, okay? I'm sure that's okay with everybody. Back in 2013, Well, I had moved to Newburyport, and I had a very good friend, Hugh Kelleher, who he and another friend of his had relatives in town, or in one case it was a neighbor who was living alone, and the family or neighbors had to kind of kick in to help these seniors who had some difficulty living at home because of illness and so forth. So they kind of thought, well, there must be a way that some kind of an organization that would be available to kind of serve these needs of folks. So they went online, and of course, what did they find? But they found the Beacon Hill Village. Now, it was pretty hard to figure out the demographics at Beacon Hill that the same as what they might be in Newburyport or the greater Newburyport area. But nevertheless, the concept was there because it was a village that had been formed for the purpose of helping seniors out who were living in their homes, many of them living alone in their homes, in the Beacon Hill area. And they would charge, I think their fee now is probably in the neighborhood of $2,500 a year. However, let me tell you, they offer things that are incredible. I mean, they will make you meals. They do everything that you can imagine. And the fee that you're paying is actually to cover the expenses because they pay people to do these things. In any event, so Hugh and Dave got together some folks in town who had similar interest in participating. Hugh, my friend, dragged me because I was new to Newburyport. I was newly retired, and he had just recently convinced me to go on the tree commission, so I was helping to plant trees. So he thought, well, gee, he's doing a great job there. Maybe he can help us to build a village. So I did join this group. So what we did is we sent out a survey to about 1,200 individuals in the Newburyport area. And we actually got about a 70% return, but if you've ever done a survey, that is a very good return. Well, we had listed a checklist of what would you like a village to provide. Well, we got lots of checklists. So from that, what we did is we held an open meeting at the Newburyport Library. And we invited folks to come, and we had probably 100 people come to this meeting. And we did a slide presentation, and we had these wonderful ideas of all the things we were going to provide. And then we asked for volunteers to help us to organize the village. We had one table where we had about 17 people sit down to say wanted to help us build the village. So you know what happens with that? Out of 17, there were 5 people who showed up at the library later in the week. And those 5 people were the folks who came together and put together the idea of what the village would look like. There were at that time about 115, 120 villages across the United States. So what we did is we looked at those villages to try to find some that kind of matched the demographics that we thought we had in Newburyport in the area. And from there, we selected how we would build the village. There were talks about would we hire somebody to run it, as an executive director, which we did start it that way. And that was useful in terms of getting it up and running. But eventually, we went to a fully volunteer village. Okay, so we have no employees. The only employees we have Bill and me, and there's a board of directors basically, and we have several teams that work to manage the village. But it's done entirely by
So we're not real employees, we just volunteer.
yeah, we're not employees, we're volunteers, but you get the message. So that's what we have done. So In 2016, we went public. So in 2016, we opened up, we had our plan together, and we were able to sign up about 30 members who are now considered charter members. And this past year, we celebrated our 5th anniversary, and now we're over 110 members. And, you know, I would say that 70% of our members are women that live alone in their homes. So that's an interesting statistic, and it's one that we totally expected we would get when we reviewed other villages. It's very common. But we do have the other 30% household memberships, okay, where there's a husband and wife, a partner in the we do have, we're a membership organization and we do have a fee. However, 20% of our members are in a membership assistance program, so that we understand that not everybody can afford our fee, which a single membership is $300, and the family membership is $450. So there are people who can't afford that, so we offer them assistance to whatever level that they can pay, on the assumption that they are going to be able to provide volunteer services for us, or that they in fact need our services. So that's an important piece of that. So we also have people that are members and volunteers, isn't that right?
That's true. So just some definitions. So a member, you join the organization and you pay dues. And we'll talk about what type of services we provide in a few minutes. Then there are non-member volunteers who, for whatever reason, aren't ready to join the village and who provide services. They just want to help. You know, so the mission here is neighbors helping neighbors, and there's a lot of people who are just going to provide a ride to somebody, or do an errand to somebody, going to their home, or assist with some type of thing. So you can be a member, terrific. You can be a member and a volunteer, which we certainly are. And then you can be a non-member. And being a non-member, well, that doesn't cost anything. You know, why would we charge anybody to do that? And we provide as much recognition for our non-member volunteers as we possibly can. So why don't I tell you a little bit about why I joined the village. And I was, my wife Donna and I were new to the Newburyport about 7 years ago. And I saw, as the village was forming, they used to have what were called meetups at a local restaurant. People would get together, they'd have a late refreshment, and the people who were forming the village would just talk about actions that they had taken. And so I saw a little blurb in the newspaper saying, if you're new to Newburyport, or the Newburyport area, we'd love to welcome you, and it's a great way to meet people. So I wanted to meet some people, so I said, Donna, let's go to this meetup. And she said, you go. So I did. I went by myself, had a great time, met a lot of people. I was a recently retired human resources director, and the executive director for the village saw that I was new to the organization, came over, welcomed me, asked what I had done for a living, and et cetera, et cetera. And then she said, you must be familiar with like employee manuals. I said, certainly I am. She said, well, we're just writing manuals now for our members and volunteers. Would you review that? So I said I would. And I don't know if you've ever joined a nonprofit organization, but you know that's the hook. And then they slowly reel you in. So I took on more and more responsibilities, and happy to do so because I was certainly looking for a way to pay back or pay forward. So many good things have happened in my life, in my career, that I want to do for others as well. So Paul, if you could, why would somebody who maybe didn't need the village join up anyhow?
Well, I can tell you this. you know, I moved to Newburyport, as I said earlier, and when I moved up, I had 3 or 4 friends in Newburyport. But when I joined the village, if I go to the Market Basket, I will run into 7 people in Market Basket who I know. And so I probably have 30 people in town who I now would say are good friends. So that was a great advantage for me. But it's very common that, you know, we like to get people who have recently retired to come and become members of the village. And, you know, one of our selling points is we say, you know, we provide services while you're at home. We'll put your barrels up, we'll do this, we'll do that, and the other thing. And somebody's just retired. They say, I don't need anybody to change a light bulb. Are you kidding me? But the good news is that they may not need somebody to change a light bulb, but as they get older, they will need somebody to change that light bulb. And while they're young and virile, and they're only 65, you know, those youngsters can provide volunteer services, and then when they get older, they will feel good about having somebody to come in to do stupid little chores that they wish they could do themselves. So we like to get those younger folks to come in. But they tell us they don't need services. So now here's the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say. You were wondering, gee, Paul came in with this cane and took on the 3rd try he can get up. Well, so what happened to Paul? Well, it was a very cold winter morning, and I went out to walk my dog. And I walked down the driveway, and I slipped in the driveway, and I hit my neck on the curb that I paid extra money and put this curb along the driveway. Well, I hit my neck on that curb, and I broke my neck. So I ended up being medi-flighted to Boston. It was a very, very difficult time for my family, because I didn't know what the hell was going on. But for them, it was very difficult. But I was in the hospital for several days and had a surgery, and they repaired me. And but I was in rehab in the hospital and at a rehab center for 3 months after that, where I literally learned how to swallow. I had a lot going on. They taught me how to walk. They taught me how to stand up, how to get out of my chair in 3 tries. That's what can happen, okay? On the Saturday before that, I was skiing on an expert trail at Bloom Mountain. So, I mean, I could change my own light bulbs. I could do anything. My wife came to visit me every day. That dog still needed to be walked. So I had paid, I don't know how much was those days, $450 for a household membership. My dog got walked 41 times while my wife came to visit me at the hospital. Now, if you've ever had your dog walked, that was a pretty good deal. So, you know, there is no time that the village is not a good idea. Even if you're just using it as that insurance policy, that there are going to be folks there. I was able at that time to take advantage of we ask members if they have had a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter or whatever. If they've had somebody who has provided them with good service, give us a recommendation and tell us who it was, what they did, and so forth. And if it was a good recommendation, we then put it on the list. And members can go to this list on our website, or they can call and the concierge will send them the information of 3 plumbers who have been recommended by people in the village. I was able to get somebody through that vendors list, who was able to put a chairlift in my house, who was able to come in and put the grab bars in my bath and so forth. I'll tell you an interesting story. He also put a ramp in my garage. And while I was in rehab, I told you I was going to tell you stories, okay? So this is a good one. You'll like this one. While I'm in rehab, I'm getting ready to go. And if you've ever been in this situation, you go through this thing where you have a case manager, and then they set up a meeting, and you have to blah, blah, blah. And they said that part of that, when they were ready to release me, they would have to do a home visit to see that my home was properly equipped. So I sent my wife home to get that done. But one of the things I asked her to do was to put a ramp in the garage. And she despised the ramp because she had to walk back and get out of her car, walk back and forth up this silly ramp, okay? So at one of our meetings that we're going to, very close to getting out, I said to my physical therapist, I said, we've been working a lot on going up and down stairs. I said, but we haven't done much with ramps. And she said, oh, Paul, you don't need a ramp. Ramps are far more difficult than stairs. So my wife had a new assignment, obviously, which was to remove the ramp. Well, we used the same vendor to do that too. But anyhow, no. I was always used to being the big boss, and I don't give my wife many orders anymore. In fact, she gives me a few. But anyhow, so that's why the village can be useful to you no matter whether you think you need it or not, because you might need it. So, and Bill, I threw you a curveball.
That's okay.
This is where I was going to ask you if you remember being a volunteer.
That's okay.
So I'm going to give it over to you, and you can add.
So we're going to talk
something.
a little bit about volunteer activities and types of services that we provide, and tell you some more stories. I'm thinking of a woman whose name is Ellen, who is a member, and she had a hip replacement. So I don't know if any of you know people who've had hip replacements or knee replacements, but the recuperation is difficult, and so Ellen asked for some assistance. Now, her sister, after the operation, stayed with her for a couple of weeks, which was terrific to get her up and going. So she needed some help after her sister left. So a number of volunteers went over, and we did a quick assessment of the home. And she lived in a very nice condo, very far removed from the street. So the first issue is she couldn't get her mail. She couldn't take the trash out to the curb or the recycling. So we had a volunteer who would every day go get her mail and then just deliver it at the door, just check in, how you doing? So she had a little visit, and somebody would just drop off the mail. Somebody else volunteered just to do that trash recycling in the business that happens every week or every 2 weeks. She needed a little help with meal assistance. We had people help with meal assistance. Before she had the surgery, we knew that was going to happen. A couple of us, myself included, went into the house, and we just made it kind of more capable of a person in that situation to avoid tripping. So we removed some rugs, moved around a couple of coffee tables to give her some room. At the time, I happened to look down into her cellar, and her washer dryer was down in the cellar. The steps were really tricky. So we had a volunteer who came when she ever needed the help to do the laundry. Sometimes take the laundry back to her own house with her own machine, bring the laundry back. So there were meals, there was help with mail, people would do food shopping for her. This lasted about a month. It wasn't much more than that. After 6 weeks, she could take over many of these errands and issues herself. She still needed a little help, but that's kind of a roundabout way of describing some of the services that we do. Food shopping, help with errands, pick up medications, drives. Transportation has been the largest request. I need a ride to the doctor. I need a ride to the Council on Aging. I need a ride to XYZ. So we'll do transportation as well. Currently, we will go as far as Boston, but there are only a few of us who are willing to do that, but that's okay. So now, here we have a picture of a gentleman who was also a founding member, and he is the concierge, Bill Jaros, who has just relocated to New York. So I haven't had time to remove his picture, and I hardly have the heart to do it. But, so what is a concierge, and what do you do if you need a service? So we have one phone number. You know, it's like Lord of the Rings, one ring to conquer all. We have one phone number, that's it. If you need some help, if you have a question, you dial that one number, and generally it was Bill who answered the phone. Now we have some other volunteers who are doing that as well, and we've trained replacements, but 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Often it will go to voicemail, but then he checks the voicemail. You need help, you need a ride, somebody did an errand, just give us 48 hours notice. Then Bill would send out an email to our group of volunteers. We have, as I said, many members who are volunteers, but we have 30 non-member volunteers, and they're waiting for things to do. So Bill would reach out, so if you need a ride, we can get you a ride for the most part. Here we did some gardening for a lady who needed some help. She no longer could do her husband had passed away. He was a landscape gardener. She had a terrific garden, but she couldn't keep it up. So, at the beginning of the year, we got together, and that made her feel terrific. We do window air conditioners. In fact, that's going to get busy first. We hope fairly soon, because I think we're all tired of the heat and humidity, but we put air conditioners in, we take air conditioners out. We'll go up to somebody's attic to get their Christmas decorations and bring them down and help them in that regards too. We don't do piano moving, but we can get you a piano mover reference. So, we had one woman who called and asked us to re-roof her house. We don't roof houses. That was, I think, a little much. However, the same woman called back later on and said, my kitchen chairs are coming unglued, the dowels. We have somebody who could do that. Well, we did. This fellow would once a week pick up a chair. 8 weeks later, all our kitchen chairs were free glued. So you can never tell what people will ask for. So Paul, tell them about Mike.
Well, this was an interesting service, and one that we were happy to provide, but it's not one that we look forward to providing for others, because Mike was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. And when I say that is because we don't want folks to get in that situation. However, it was an extremely rewarding service that we did. So we had been contacted by Mike's sister, and she had been tending to Mike's needs. Mike lived alone on Plum Island in a home that at one time was the family summer cottage. And he had really spruced it up so he could live there year-round, and had lived there year-round for several years after he retired. But now she needed to have somebody who could just check in on him. So we explained that we are happy to be able to do that, but we do not manage medications for people, and we don't provide any medical type of assistance for folks, because we're just not qualified to do that. And it would if we did do it, it would make like this giant difference in what our insurance premiums might be as well. So it's something that we very particularly do not do. But Mike was quite a character, and we would visit him, and he had a collection of shells that he loved to. He would go into his crawl space underneath when folks were coming to visit. He would drag out different shells every time again, and he would have trays of these shells. And he just loved to show them off and tell us what mollusk was in that shell and so forth. And he had a wonderful collection of photographs of Plum Island that went back to his childhood. And he would show us photographs, and every photograph would spawn a story. And he would tell us a story of the dance hall that used to be at Plum Island, okay? And he would be able to tell you, eyewitness stories about about Plum Island. So to visit him was not just something that was rewarding to him to have people come in, but you would leave after doing it and you felt so good. It just made you feel wonderful. And we had probably 7 or 8 people who rotated to do this service, and you would wait for your turn because it was that rewarding. So we did this for Mike for probably about a year or so, maybe a little longer than a year. And Mike eventually went into assisted living, and we continued to go to visit him there. And what we discovered, even when he went to his assisted living, he was such a personality that it was almost like he didn't need us anymore, because he would be in the community room or in the cafeteria, and he would have people at his table because what would he be doing? He'd be telling him the stories. So it was like, made us feel good to see him there and fitting into that situation. But it was something where his sister had reached out to us, and we were very happy that we could provide that service. So those are things that we would do, and we did do that for, normally we do these short-term things, but for Michael, for somebody who would get in that situation, we would be able to find people who would be looking for the opportunity for that type of rewarding service. So Bill, it's not unusual, is it, for folks for a family member to suggest they might have somebody.
Sure, that happens frequently. We'll have, of course, children grow up and children move away, and parents stay behind, and parents get older. And so we do have a number of instances where people have said, I don't live in Newburyport, but my mother does. She's living alone. Would you be able to help her? Whenever anybody asks to join the village, we always do a check-in first to make sure that we can provide the services that they need. If it's beyond what we can do, we have to mention that. And as Paul had just talked about Mike, we spend a lot of time thinking about that. So we do have people, I can think of Beverly, I can think of Ann. Parents, this one instance of Beverly's lives in Ithaca, New York. But she checks in frequently with phones. And so we visit with Beverly, we take her for rides. She's a long-term Newburyport school teacher, stands about 4'2", and very frail. So we have concerns about her, so we're in communication every once in a while with daughter, just to make sure things are fine. We have provided meals for her. We're working now with one of the churches to provide ongoing services. She's doing well, mid-90s at this point, and so, this is a service we can provide for people who call and say, I don't live here anymore, can you check in on Mom? Yeah, we can do that. So, Paul, how are we different from like a senior center or a council on aging? Because we're not that.
Well, as I said in the beginning, we're the same except for where we're different.
Yeah.
So, I guess one of the things that, we provide a lot of the same things. We do rides, we do events, we take them to museums, all those types of things. But I tend to think that by being a member of the village, it becomes something that is a little bit more personal in terms of, when somebody becomes a member of the village, what we try to do during non-COVID times at least, is after we have 2 or 3 members who have joined the village, what we do is we plan kind of a cocktail party at somebody's home where we invite people from the board, for example, maybe a couple of folks from a program and events team, and some members who have been members for a short period of time. And we introduce them to kind of a mix of folks in the village, so they start to get to know people. We may also invite a volunteer or two to those gatherings. So what happens is, when we provide a service, such as a ride, the likelihood is the person who shows up to give you the ride is a person with whom you've had some contact. We do monthly visits, monthly what we call village bites. And what we do is we book a group of tables for about 20 people each month at a local restaurant. And then we just have an open invitation. We usually get enough people to basically fill most of those seats. And that's an opportunity for people to come and meet. And one of the people who comes to give you a ride may be somebody you met at one of those dinners or lunches. So it's kind of a more personal thing. The person who comes to get you your decorations out of the attic may be somebody who you've met somewhere else, or who probably gave you a ride last week. So you kind of develop this personal relationship with the folks who provide you the services. So in that way, it's a little different than if you got a ride from me, where somebody's going to show up and they may live in Lawrence. You just don't know who's coming in, which is fine, and they'll get you where you're going, but it's a little bit different than if it's somebody who you know. We do work closely with the senior center. They have what they call community days. This is the Newburyport Senior Center. They have community days, which they do each Wednesday. And the community day is something where they offer some kind of a presentation or an event for members of the community. And on the third Wednesday of each month, the village provides a speaker, and we have done several of these over the years. I mean, somewhere we're going to tell you how many we've done, but we've done them for 5 years. I mean, and we do everything from having veterans come in to speak, to having Bill Getty, who is with Mass Audubon, or was with Mass Audubon, and come in and tell us about all birds, flora. We have had just wonderful presentations where we'll have anywhere from 30 to 50 people. Sometimes we have to get additional chairs. So we've been able to provide some really good activities for them. We also take advantage of Newburyport Senior Center to rent their space for some of our activities. We do a town hall each year where we bring members and volunteers in to see how we're doing. It's like a state of the village. So we rent it for that, or we have rented it for barbecues that we have done. We also utilize and rent their conference room for board meetings twice a month. So, of course, I've been doing those on Zoom, so I've been paying Zoom instead of the city of Newburyport. But these are things that we do work with them. As a matter of fact, this year we will be co-sponsoring with the Friends of the Newburyport Council on Aging. We'll be co-sponsoring the Visiting Chef program. So we're going to be helping them with the funding that's necessary for that. So we're looking forward to that. So
So what a lot of what Paul has just mentioned was pre-pandemic. So that changed so many things for us in the village. So we have a mission that has several components. Our first mission is providing services, and the neighbors helping neighbors, linking neighbors together. And the other component is combating social isolation. And, because that's very detrimental to people, and many seniors spend a lot of time alone. But the pandemic certainly threw us a curveball, as it did everybody else. So Paul is going to just quickly address, we've got a couple slides here. You know, what did we do pre-pandemic? Like, let's go back to January of 2020 and think about how we were moving along. And we had a huge schedule planned for ourselves, meetings and meetups and dinners, and then things changed. So Paul, I'm going to go back to you a little bit.
Well, you know, isolation is a big deal for seniors. You know, and you can read about it if you haven't experienced it yet. But if you're a senior and you're kind of stuck in your home, especially in the last year, you sure as heck know what isolation is. It's a really difficult thing, and isolation, of course, can lead to depression. So one of the things we do is we try to stay in touch with people. So we make check-in calls, and we have called every member of the village, and we ask them, how are you doing? And if they would, and we ask them if they'd like us to be in touch with them more often. And if they say yes, we would call them once a week. If they said they needed a call once a day, we'd find somebody to do that. So we have some folks who have asked us to call them on a regular rotating basis. But on others, we then every few months will put that call out to the whole group again to see how things are going. We keep track of everybody's birthday. Everybody gets a birthday card. And of course, the gal who does that has a lot of fun doing it, picking out the cards and finding cute things to say about people when she sends them out. If somebody has been recently in the hospital or is convalescing or recovering from an injury, we generally send them flowers. But recently what we've decided is kind of a more logical thing. If you're kind of laid up, flowers are great, but you have to get somebody to water them for you, you know. But if you get a gift certificate to the local bookstore, Jabberwockies, it's kind of neat that you get a gift certificate and you can go down and get a book that you might have been thinking about reading. So, well, I don't know if they still sell toys, so I don't know if they can use that to buy some toys for their grandchildren. But they obviously would have to send somebody down to get the book. But we'd be happy to go down and get it for them.
Moved ahead to the next slide from April to December, how we had to shift activities because we couldn't have these big things.
Yeah, you know, we had talked about village bites that we used to do where we'd go out to dinner once a month. So we kind of had the idea that, you know, our local restaurants, and in Newburyport, of course, we have lots of them. They were suffering, but there were some that were at this point were doing takeout. So what we decided is, heck, let's do something to support both the restaurants and to give the villages an opportunity to go and get a takeout. So we sent each village member or each village membership a $20 gift card to a restaurant of their choice. So I think we had 5 restaurants that we picked, and they would, you know, some people wanted to go to Loretta and some people wanted to go to Park Dine. Okay, so they were, you know, people have different tastes. So we then sent those out, and those people could go and get a takeout. And I can tell you, when it was great to give that opportunity to our members, but when you called one of the restaurants and you said, we would like to buy some gift certificate, and they would say, how many would you like? And you would say, I would like 36 of them, okay? And, well, how much for? I mean, they were thrilled, and they were very, very thrilled that we had thought about them. And generally what we did is we selected restaurants that were doing takeout, and we selected restaurants who had accommodated us with a spot for 20 people, you know, which is which is sometimes a little bit of a task for somebody who's operating a restaurant. We usually went out to dinner like on a Tuesday night, which was not so bad. But we had to go to do things online, so we, you know, as I said earlier, my four-letter word now is Zoom. You know, I think there should be a Z in COVID, okay? Because the V means vertical, a virtual, I mean. So I call it virtual COVID. What we did also is we wanted to make sure we stayed in touch with people on a regular basis. And what's a regular basis means? It means that there may be some program that you watch on Thursday night. Well, what we decided is there's going to be an update from the village every Tuesday morning. And I'm going to tell you, it worked. There were people who waited for the Tuesday update. Donna, sitting over there in the corner, was responsible for getting the Tuesday update out. And I'm going to tell you, she was relentless to get information from people so that she could do it. And she did. We'll be telling you, is it up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, 211 Tuesday updates. And I don't know if that's current. Is that current, 211?
Well, no, because we've gone to monthly over
Yeah.
the summer, because people are mostly outside and enjoying the outside. But, so it's a little more than that at this
Yeah.
point.
So anyhow, but in those Tuesday updates, we told them a little bit about what was going on in the village, you know, what talks were going to be coming out on Zoom, because talks that we did at the senior center now were being done on Zoom, which was needed. It was a whole education to figure out how to do that and record it. But in the Tuesday update were links. And I know you folks were probably doing the same thing. It was nothing, you didn't invent anything new, but it was an alternative place where people it would come to them on Tuesdays. And I know my wife, who is not a great one for emails and so forth, she would look at every Tuesday update and she would click on the links and she'd listen to the Boston Symphony or the Handel and Haydn Society or a TED Talk or whatever it might be. But there was always something interesting and it always came. It was in your box Tuesday morning. You could count on it being. We did happy hours on Friday nights. We would Zoom people and people would sit in front of their computer or their iPad or their iPhone and they would have a glass of wine and maybe they had 2 glasses of wine and they would just interact and enjoy each other's company. And we just recently ended those because we felt, well, it's run its course and we got some kickback that there are still folks who still would like to be doing this. So you know, I think we think Zoom was something we only had for a while. Well, we may be kind of forced back into it, but I even think that even if we're not forced back into it, it has become a way of an alternative way of staying connected. So I think villages and council and agents will continue to use it as a medium. We had a chat room on Tuesday mornings where people could come and get together and just shoot the breeze with each other. They might have a topic that they were going to discuss. We did Zoom talks and walks. Again, Bill Getty took us on a walk on every trail on the North Shore, I think, and he had actually videoed the walks and took pictures and videos of his walk, and it was almost as if you were able to go on it and you didn't have to deal with the roots or anything underneath the trails. It was great. So, well, I don't know if I got how far
I think you
got
did.
off the thing,
I
but,
think the point is clear. We tried desperately to come up with activities to keep people together and combat
So you know what I did? I need to tell them that our 5th anniversary was in February. We usually have a large gathering, basically a cocktail, hors d'oeuvres, appetizers, so forth. We couldn't do that. So what we did, we made a gift bag. And in the gift bag, we put a gift card to a restaurant. And this was a gift card that bought somebody a meal at a restaurant, not $20. So we figured, well, we'll buy them a meal. And we put some other gifts in there, puzzles and coloring books and things like that, activities that were better. We had 97 bags that needed to be made. Okay, we had photographs of these bags. They were in somebody's bedroom, and they were on the bed, and they were in the bureaus, they were everywhere. And one person, because she thought it was not a good idea to gather during COVID to do this, so she put all of these bags together herself. So it was interesting, and she made no bones about letting us know how much effort she put into it. And we were very grateful too. We then scheduled delivery routes where people had to drive to each of these homes, and people would take probably 6 to 10 packages there. And I mean, we delivered packages to Byfield, we delivered packages to Salisbury, I mean, all the way out to Salisbury Beach. Then, I mean, we could just have packages going everywhere. And to some addresses that were difficult to find too, because some errors. But we got them all delivered, and everybody appreciated it. That was our celebration for our 5th anniversary. Bill.
So over the 5 years that we've been, 5+ now, on the average we did 30, 35 service calls to members. So we were fairly busy. Since the pandemic, dropped off to 2 or 3. And we were hoping that we were on the other side of it, but I don't think who knows? It doesn't look good right now. So we've been planning a number of events, and now we're starting to put events on hold. But all of our volunteers are vaccinated. We have protocols for going into people's homes and providing rides. So we're very cautious. We are keeping track of the vaccination of all of our members. And if we don't have a copy of your vaccination card, we don't provide a service for a ride. So we're just trying to keep people safe. And Paul had mentioned that we were very active with Village Talks. We've done over 90 Village Talks since in that 5 years on all sorts of topics. We had one gentleman who came to talk about he's actually a physics professor at MIT, but he's a swimmer. And he is one of the 8 people in the world who swam the English Channel, swam around Manhattan Island, and swam to Catalina and back. There's only 8 of them. So he came to talk about his hobby. Food dinners and lunches. And so we want to get back to that type of activity, and we're just waiting for it to say. So I have one more slide, and then if there are conversation questions, we'll be happy to answer. So how do you learn more? We have an extremely active website. So it's at greaternewburyportvillage.org, and you can just Google it, type it in, it'll bring you to us. And you can learn all about us with these drop downs. If you want to join, just click on this lovely lady's face. I sign up today. Joining is pretty easy. And if you want to volunteer, there is a link here that you can volunteer. Specifically now, we talked about what we call our services, which are good neighbor volunteers. And we have another type of volunteer, which are called village builders. And village builders really work behind the scenes. So our concierge, Bill Jaros, has left for Rhode Island for family and medical reasons. And so we could use more help with people answering the phone. It's pretty easy. or checking on the answering machine. We could always use help in IT. So if anybody has skills in that area, specifically we're looking for that. So you can download an application online. It's very simple to do. Print it off, mail it to our post office box, and somebody will call you. Or there's an application online. If that's more convenient for people to use that service, that's fine. Then somebody's going to reach out to you. Before you become a member, somebody's going to call and say, hi, let me explain more about the village and let me learn a little bit more about you and what is it you need, so that we know, that we can work effectively together and be a good match. So, Paul, thank you very much. You did most of the talking here, and I appreciate it. Are there any questions? Yes.
We spoke a lot about the Council on Aging in Newburyport.
Yes.
Do you ever do anything through the Byfield Council on Aging, like when you have your talks or any of these things? Are any of those things held through them, or just in?
No, I was going to go there. So what I want to do is I want to offer to you folks that if you see that we could help you with any of your things or your activities, or if you need help, we might be able to also schedule talks here. And, I'd have to, we'd run that through program and events folks and figure out how they would be able to work with you to do that. What happens is, of course, that those folks are busy and they try to get something once a month to do there is a bit of a challenge. But in some cases, what we might be able to do is have somebody who would be willing to do one there and also repeat the same thing.
Yeah.
So there may be a way that if our speakers are available to do that, but we would certainly also be happy to share with you some of the speakers that we have used, and so that we would be able to contact them should you.
That would be great.
And Paul, since we've had them on Zoom, all our village talks have been on Zoom since the pandemic started. There might be a way to just share the link to that so that.
Right, great.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
talked
well,
about
that could be something we could do right away.
Yeah.
So we could, I have no idea how to do that, but we could.
Why don't you give me your name and email address maybe, and we'll work out a way for you to advertise the talks, because they're open to the broader community.
Sure.
And we just haven't, when they were advertised, so that would, while they're on Zoom, it would work very easily. And then when they're taking place in an actual physical location, then we'd have to work out.
Right. So your Zoom talks are recorded then?
Yeah.
Not all of them.
Okay.
You have to get
But
permission.
you could get a link to the live presentation.
Okay.
And I think they'll take up to 100 people, and
Right.
I don't think there'd be an overabundance of people, zooming in. But so
We have found that to be a challenge in Newbury. Zoom hasn't been a huge vehicle for us.
Yeah.
So we have, when you were talking about Channel 9,
Yeah,
we had recorded things, whether it be on Zoom, and then we'd show it on Channel 9.
And then you put it on
We were
Zoom.
reaching a greater
we
audience
do,
that way.
we record if the
Speaker
presenter
is okay.
allows.
Yeah.
So we do have some recorded ones that we could access.
Sure.
Yeah.
so you two can get connected?
Yes.
Because you don't want me doing that. But I think it's, one of the things that the village needs to be able to do is, obviously, the majority of our membership live in Newburyport. So, and we have, many of us have had connections with the Newburyport Council on Aging. So that's where we have do most of our connections. But it is really something that we need to be more active in reaching out to you folks and to the other folks in Salisbury and in Amesbury, where we also provide services. So, and I think we have 2 people now in
Raleigh?
Raleigh. So, you know, so we need to be more involved with you folks to where we can kind of share ideas.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
So
to
we already
collaborate
do
would be
that.
great.
Like the first.
So again, thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for all that you guys do for us old folks.
Thank you.
Okay.